All right, a very warm welcome and good evening wherever you are watching us from. You're right on time. This is Know Your Laws, where we talk on matters to do with law, justice, and legal affairs. As usual, always our core value is to educate you, help you, and learn the laws that govern you. And this evening, we'll be talking quite in-depth of the commercial laws. Of course, the month of January will be breaking down parts and segments of the commercial law for your purpose, for you to be educated and learn what you need to know. Our today's topic being registration of companies. That is what we'll be talking about. Of course, you might be knowing little about what is required when you're registering your company, but there is a lot of legalities, a lot of laws that govern that particular process. That is what we will be breaking down this evening right here on your favorite TV station, KAK TV, and I'll be with my guest here in studio. I'll be introducing him shortly. But remember, we are streaming live on Facebook at KAK TV Kenya. Also, we are streaming live on YouTube at KAK TV Kenya. You can send in your feedback, your questions in regards to this particular conversation, and also you can send in your your messages through our SMS number, which is 011-122-00444. I understand that the number will be scrolling at the bottom of your screen so that you can be able, to send in your feedback, your questions, and we'll be answering them as we continue with this particular conversation. And having said that, it's my time now to welcome our guest in studio, because this particular topic is one that you need to know, because one small mistake and then you're in for trouble. And I just want to introduce my guest here in studio, Oyunge Bosire. Karibu sana kwenye studio zetu, and welcome to the program. Oyunge Bosire is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and also managing partner of Oyunge and Associate Advocates. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. I'm glad to be here tonight.
Of course, I've introduced you widely, and maybe just to begin, as we set pace for this particular conversation, you tell us what Oyunge and Associate Advocates does, and what exactly do you do?
Okay, so Oyunge and Advocate as Associates is a small boutique firm where we generally do general practice. We're based in Parklands, and we strive as much as possible to provide the best legal services. Our motto is efficient, effective services, legal services, and I'm hoping today to educate you one or two things about companies law in Kenya, specifically on incorporation, registration, how you run your company, basically. I'm glad to be here tonight.
Right, that's a great introduction, and yes. Let's talk about this particular conversation. We've talked about incorporation and the registration of companies, and owing to the fact that here in Kenya, of course, there is the laws that govern that particular process and all that. Let's begin here. What is the Kenyan law, or rather, what is the setup of the Kenyan law in regards to registration of companies and also incorporation of companies?
So in Kenya, where we start from is the Constitution of Kenya. That is in the law we call it the ground law. That is the backbone from which all laws operate in the country. Of the Constitution of Kenya, then we have the Companies Act, which then provides the framework as to how you run and operate companies in Kenya, or establishment. We call them legal vehicles for which you conduct business in Kenya. Yes.
And having talked about that particular acts and the Companies Act, of course, the different parts of the law that govern that particular process. Let's begin here. The registration, incorporation of companies. For someone who is watching us, perhaps maybe wondering, where do I begin? You've talked about the different acts and all that. Where do I begin? Let's begin by defining the entire process. Where does it start up until it ends?
Yes, so thankfully in Kenya, the government has tried as much as possible to simplify the process. What they're trying to do is actually it's geared towards removing the legal practitioners, and you can be able to incorporate your company from the comfort of your bedroom or your seat. So the best place to start is to decide which vehicle you want to use. So do you want to do a business name? Do you want to do a limited liability company? Do you want to do a public company? So basically, those are the structures that are available. Certain other companies that exist are maybe companies limited by guarantee, but mostly those ones are for non-profit making company, or rather institutions. But I would imagine the reason as to why I'm here is with respect to profit-making companies.
Yes, definitely.
So with respect to profit-making companies, I don't want to call them companies. I want to call them vehicles that you can use to do business in Kenya. So you can do a business name. You can, which is a straightforward. It's not a company in itself. Rather, it's just a business vehicle that you can use to. It's a registered vehicle that you can use to conduct business in Kenya. You can do a company that is limited by, and it's structured using shares. So you can purchase shares. You can have shares. And then you can do a public company where you have very many shareholders, and every shareholder wants a stake in that company. Each and every of those vehicles have their advantages and their disadvantages. Yes.
And talking about the limited companies, the public companies, and all that, someone would be perhaps asking, for you to have them registered. What is a bigger difference, when you talk about limited and public companies and all?
So a limited liability company, basically, what in legal terms is that it's a person by itself. It's a legal entity by itself. So a legal entity is something that can be sued, something that can sue any other person, something that can incur liability. As an individual, for instance, you can get into debt in your personal capacity. But as also as a company itself devoid of its shareholders can also get into acquire loan, for instance. So that is what you're talking about. So you can decide to commence. I'd like to start from the basic.
Definitely.
The very basic is the business name. So a business name is not a company per se. It's just an individual who goes to the government, tells them that I want to run a business. I intend to be fully liable for that business. So for instance, if there are losses to that business, I will be liable to them. If there are profits, I'll be personally liable to them. If, for instance, the company is sued for whatever reason, I will be personally liable to that. The company itself, for instance, does not have a KRA PIN, for instance. The KRA PIN of the individual forming that, using that vehicle is what is used. Second, you'll go to a limited liability company. So a limited liability company, as I've explained to you, is a legal entity by itself. It's a person. It's a legal person. So the only mode of owning it is through shares. You can decide how many shares you want. You can have 10, you can have 1, you can have 1,000,000, you can have 100,000. You can decide. And then you can decide to apportion what the share value of that company is. It can be from 1 shilling to whatever amount of money. You decide that's the value of the shares. Depending on also your financial position. So some companies have share values of 1,000,000 shillings, others have share values of a shilling. A public company, I mostly see them, especially with limited companies that are in the Nairobi Stock Exchange, for instance, because you do not know how many number of shareholders are going to subscribe to that company. So it's open. Anybody can come in and can leave at their own will. I also see them increasingly in these huge developments, real estate projects. The tenants in that area decide that we want to form a company that is going to do the maintenance for the estate. And you see there are, for instance, Nyayo Estate, for instance, has, let's say, 1,000 tenants. Okay. So they say that we are going to form a company called Nyayo Estate Public Company, and it's going to have 1,000 people, and the owners of the units in Nyayo Estate are the ones who are going to be the shareholders. So that would be it. You can also look at it in this way: public limited liability, private. Rather, if I can differentiate, private limited liability companies. There's a restriction as how you can come in and you can move out. They are private in nature. So, for instance, if you want to get out of the company, you are only required, you are restricted to selling your shares to people who are already inside the company. You cannot sell your shares to somebody outside.
Outside the company.
However, getting, for instance, if it's a company that has very many shareholders, you can decide to have a meeting in the company and prepare something called a resolution, say that we want to sell. We first of all advertise shares in this company, nobody wants to take them up, so we have allowed you to sell them outside. But the shareholders of the company that you're in have first refusal of those shares. The idea of that is to prevent, people just coming in and going out of companies, because the unsophisticated nature of such companies. Because in Kenya, not very many Kenyans are very sophisticated on how to run companies. And so due to that reason, and it's also sort of like an entry vehicle into business. Anybody who wants to do a business nowadays just wants to do a company, regardless of whether you know what a company is or
you don't know.
Or you don't know. You just say, I want a company. Mama Mboga once says, I want a company so that I can run my Mama Mboga business. Or maybe I can get a loan or something like that. Yes.
And talking about that, perhaps there's that common knowledge that is usually perhaps mistakenly that some people may think that there are some companies that can run without being legally registered, and there are some which can run being legally registered. Is that a matter of fact?
No. All companies must be registered. All companies. If you call your whatever vehicle it is, if you call your Duka Baraka Kiosk Limited, that Baraka Kiosk Limited has to be registered. So it's registered by a service called the BRS, Business Registration Service. There's a procedure that you do to incorporate your company. Good thing is that now you don't have to sometimes go there physically. The BRS has a portal in the eCitizen platform. So I'm sure you're aware of the eCitizen platform.
Definitely.
Yes. So you get to the eCitizen platform, you create an account with them. Once you create an account with them, you go and there's certain procedures that you take yourself through. If I can take you through that.
Definitely.
So you will choose the name of the company that you want. I see a lot of times they say that you do 3 names. You can do one if you feel very strongly about your one, you can do it. The reason as why our lawyers advise people to do 3 names is because there's a possibility that name could already be taken by somebody else. There's a company by that name already in existence. So you can have 2 more options from which you can decide to choose whichever one you can do. Once you get an approval from the BRS that your name is proper and there's no company bearing that name, then from then on you will prepare the incorporation forms. These are forms that you can download at the platform, and then you can fill them up. What you require is basically your ID and your KRA PIN. That's just that, and then you can decide what number of shares you want to apportion, how many shareholders are in that company. On that form you will fill everything that you need to fill. Initially you had to prepare something called memorandum and articles of association, but that has since been removed by the state, just so they can ease doing business, for the ease of doing business, because sometimes those memorandum, called the MEMATs, sometimes the MEMATs are very complex documents that need advocates to prepare them, in the first place, to prepare them and also to scrutinize them. And you'll notice that the idea was that to make the registration of companies as easy as possible. Yes.
And talking about that particular procedure, you've talked about the issue of coming up with a vehicle, and also the public and the limited ones and the private limited ones. There was a case that I think happened late last year.
Yes.
In that there was a difference. I'll avoid quoting the particular companies.
Yes.
It was a motor vehicle company. I don't know whether you interact with that particular story, where initially it said that there was the person who was the pioneer of that particular company, and then when it got to some point, the person who says that he began that particular company says the people that he brought in as co-owners in a form of shareholding, they dethrone him the company. So how possible is it that you can register a company yourself, and then it happens that somebody who did not register then dethrones you of that particular company?
So that's a very interesting question, and I know exactly what you're talking about. But just for clarification purposes, the individuals who, according to the statement that was released, the individuals who kicked out that gentleman, they're the ones who incorporated the company. That is the story as it is. But that said and done, so there is a shareholding structure. Let's say you have 100 shares. You have 100 shares, and the two of us, we had 3 people. Like that case of that company, we had 3 people, and the 3 of us own shares in that company. For instance, you own, let's say we all own 33.3% of that company, to make it 100. So companies act like democracies. So if they are a majority, they can make a decision to overrule you, to kick you out of the company. All they have to do is go into a meeting and it's called a special general meeting, and then they can decide that by a special resolution and by a majority, we have decided that we have the votes to kick you out of the company. Really, there's nothing you can do with respect to that part, because you see, it's a democracy. You can decide what to do with your company. Sometimes you can get legal redress in courts. For instance, if there's some funds that are being owed or something like that. But ideally, a company should work like a democracy. The majority wins. And that's probably the essence of the shares also, is that X amount of shares equate to a certain percentage of the company. And that percentage of the company then decide the affairs of the company. Yes.
And talking about the decision making of maybe the vehicle that you're using now, you talked about the name vehicle.
Yes.
You look at at a public company and the private company. Now there is that procedure for, so you feel that maybe this company should not be private. We now need to make it public. What is the procedure like?
So the Companies Act provides a procedure for conversion. You can convert your company from a private limited liability company to a public limited liability company. And the way to go about that then is to do a resolution as a company. And you decide that by majority we have decided that the company should become a public company for whatever reasons. And then you will go again to the BRS, Business Registration Service, and then you will prepare the forms that are necessary for you to be able to do that conversion. You will prepare these forms. Some of those forms require to be stamped by an auditor. It's something called a Form D. Some of those documents need to be stamped by a company secretary if you have one, to stamp them. Some need to be stamped by an advocate. So once you get all these things, all your affairs in order, and you have all the required forms, the good thing about the BRS portal is they give you all the requirements. The forms are labeled as 1 to 11 to 15, whatever And each of these forms refer to specific things. So you will just follow the guidelines that they have provided to you, and then you can be able to fill all these forms. Ideally, the process of conversion is a technical process, so you probably need an advocate to advise you on that, so that you know what exactly it is that you're getting into.
And just before we take our very first break,
Yes.
just a very quick question. Between the public conversion of public into a private and private into a public, which one is more easier, if so to say, or which one is not so much complicated?
So it's easier to convert a private to a public. I tell you that because of the number of reporting that you have to do to the government. So because as a public entity, first of all, getting the consensus to do that, because the number is huge. I would imagine the only reason why you do hunt a public company in that scenario is because you have very many interested shareholders. Now, getting a consensus from all those shareholders is hard at the first instance. Another thing is that the reporting that you have to do with the BRS and all the other stakeholders. So maybe you're incorporated in the NSE, so you have to comply with the NSE guidelines. You're registered with the Capital Markets Authority. They have to give you their authority. Certain other authorities, for instance, if you're in a specific market, you're in the medical field, you have to get some approvals from somewhere. So I would think that the conversion of a private to public is much simpler.
Much simpler. Yes. Right, and I think the viewers as well noted that particular point, and we're going to take a very short commercial break, but don't go far away, because when we resume on the second bit of this particular program, we'll also be dwelling on the bigger part of this particular segment of registration of companies. Don't go far away. Remember, we are streaming live on Facebook at CAC TV Kenya, and as well we are also streaming live at YouTube. I'm seeing some of your feedback coming. I'll be reading them as we come back from this short break, so don't go far away. Stay with us.
PCEA Enomatesiani Booth Boys High School is an ideal school for boys located in a quiet and serene environment, ideal for learning in Matasia, Kajiado County. The school works towards producing qualified students who become competent professionals in the society.
We offer a wide variety of subjects in our school. Our school is well equipped. We have a state-of-the-art library, a spacious boarding section, a modern kitchen, also Olympic-sized swimming pool where our students go and have their swimming lessons.
The school focuses its effort not only in classroom learning, but we also provide learners with equal opportunities, that is to hone their abilities and talents. We have games like football, chess, volleyball, among others. The climate here is also favorable for all students.
PCEA Enomatesiani Booth Boys High School is open for January 2023 intake in Forms 1, 2 and 3.
Our school is founded on Christian value. We appeal for you to register, and we know we'll be able to mentor your boys through our Christian setup.
We are going to mold our boys in Christian values, and we are committed to do so at this time when the boy child must be taken care of.
For more information, get in touch via 0796 560000, 0796 560000. Email us pcea@enoboothboys@gmail.com.
Unanisikia? Stand by.
Okay, Shina.
All right, welcome back to KAK in the morning. To KAK, know your laws. As we talk about matters to do with company registration, remember we are streaming live on Facebook at KAK TV Kenya, and also we are streaming live on YouTube at KAK TV Kenya. As we continue with this particular conversation, of course, there is much to talk about company registration. We've been talking about the entire process and all that is required for you to be able, to legally register your company, or rather your vehicle that you'll be using to transact business. And we were talking about, the easiest way of, converting, a public company to a private company, and a private company to a public company. When you do not, maybe when you're converting a public company to a private company, you do not get the consensus of all, perhaps the shareholders, and then maybe you are the biggest shareholder and you decide that you're going to do things your ways. What are the consequences in such a scenario?
So, that's actually a very interesting question, because we would want to know what is your shareholding in the company. Because you can be a majority, but you have 30% of the company as an individual. So you will not be able. So the word majority shareholder is a bit relative. Be that as it may, you would certainly need, say, 70%. I believe the Act says 70%, 75% of consensus to something like that. And you would also need to have a consensus with all of the minority shareholders. Because in as much as you have your way, the minority shareholders must have their say. So once you have that, then you can be able, other than that, then you cannot be able to do a conversion. Because it would be so hard for you to even run that company. And you never know, maybe the person that was supporting you today, tomorrow might not be supporting you in that company. So it is very important that you have a consensus, and also the minority have their say. Yes.
And talking about, the shareholding factor, especially when running maybe either private or, or rather say public company, is quite pivotal in the entire business of that particular company. Let's talk about the allotment of the shares and all that.
Yes.
We understand that it is a voluntary thing for you to maybe purchase shares of a certain company, but are there, is there a legal framework or other legalities for you to be able to do so?
Yes. All the operations of a company, the way the company acts, considers it or intends it to be, they ought to be legal. It's imperative, if you own a registered company, that you report every single changes to the company, to the BRS. We used to call it the company, the company, forget the name, but now it's called the BRS. It was rebranded. But we used to call it companies in the trade. We just go to companies. But now it's called the BRS. It's important that you report to the BRS every single happening of the company. As I told you, with respect to private limited liability companies, you can only sell within the shareholders of the company. But with the new Companies Act, there was the introduction of a solo ownership of a company, for instance. Because of the solo nature of that company, then as the shareholder, you can decide that I'm going to I'm going to make a resolution by myself that we want to add more shareholders into the company, and so we do an allotment of it. So it will depend, first of all, on the number of shareholders that you have, and also the shareholding of the company, because you cannot allot what you don't have. For instance, if the company has one share, and you need to have 2 shares, you will have to create an extra share. Okay, you'll have to create an extra share. However, if you have shares that have not already been allocated to somebody, then you can decide to allot those shares to whoever it is that you want, subject to complying with the regulations. So the process of allotment of letters of shares is different with different companies. That's all I can say. Certain, if you have a limited liability partnership, you can decide that as the shareholders, if you have many shareholders, as a shareholder, we've decided that we've received an offer from one of our shareholders to purchase the shares. We are not able to purchase the shares by ourselves. We have decided that we allow him to sell the shares to an outsider. For a public limited company, the process is different because there's the public is invited to purchase shares in that company or to acquire shares in that company, as the case may be, and so there will not be a need for such consultations between the shareholders, because generally you have by getting into a public company, you have agreed that the public can acquire shares. Yes.
Right, I think that is a point made clear, because there has been certain confusion when it comes to matters to do with shares. But maybe perhaps for someone who would be watching, would be wondering, what does it mean when we talk about buying shares, legally buying shares? For someone who would be asking themselves, what are shares?
So how can I explain this? Let's say a company, let's say a company is a sliced loaf of bread. Okay. A sliced loaf of bread, when I was young, we used to fight for the slice. I think they were 14 then. I don't know how many they are right now.
I think they're 16 right now.
No, they're 16. Yes. So let's say this loaf of bread is a company. Okay. It has 16 slices. Those 16 slices are the shares. That's the best I can be able to put it. And so you apportion a value to each slice. Okay, say that one slice is 10 bob, 10 shillings, or one slice is 100 shillings. Because companies limited, private limited companies, all the shares must have a value. You cannot incorporate a company whose share value is 0. It has to have a value. So you have to give a value to each shares. So you say 1 shilling or 2 shillings. So for that loaf of bread, if you put it at 1 shilling, it will be 16 shillings is the value of that company. Yes. And so then you decide that you want to sell 4 slices. Those 4 slices are 4 shares. You to sell those 4 shares. So for limited liability, a private limited liability company, you have to inform all these other 12 slices that we want to sell 4 slices. And you have to tell these 12 other, you have to first of all advertise these shares to these 12. If all of them are unable to purchase these 4 slices, then they will agree that now that you are unable to purchase, let's go get person X to come, or slice 17 to come and purchase these shares. Yes, these slices.
I think that is put in a layman's language.
Yes.
Coming into that particular context of you buying the portion that you can.
Yes.
In a scenario where the other shareholders maybe feel they're not satisfied with one of the shareholders, and then is there any legal framework, or is it illegal to forcefully push them and force them to sell their shares?
Yes. So, like I said, it's a majority, but then you have to provide a reason as to why you're giving this other person. For instance, maybe he's acting against the interests of the company, or is a direct competitor of the company, as a business X that is in direct competition of the company. You have to provide specific reasons for that. You cannot just decide today that you want to kick this person out. Sometimes this accusation can be fictitious. Unfortunately, with respect to those, with respect to what you need to file at the BRS, it's not a judicial thing. You don't need to go to litigate for that. But what usually happens is that even if you do that, somebody goes to court and says that, and serves and files something called an injunction. Tells the BRS, first of all, do not transfer these shares, because I believe that I'm being my company is being taken away from me, or I don't think these people are kicking me out against my will, or for whatever reasons. So there's a framework under the courts for that, but then the BRS really doesn't. As long as you have complied with their requirements, they really don't, for lack of a better, they really don't care why
You're being pushed away.
rather there's nothing they can do. Let me put it like that. There's nothing they can do with respect to that. So their only role is to not adjudicate these issues. Their only role is to register. Yes.
You talked about that. There's a phrase that is used that sisi hatuna nguvu.
Hatuna uwezo. Yeah.
And then let's talk about something very critical when it comes, to the regulation of registered companies. We've seen some of the companies gone rogue.
Okay.
Of late, there has been a discussion of about a certain, I think, a housing company that has gone rogue in regards to it's not giving or serving the purpose of what it was being registered. Not one, two, or three. There have been several. In regards to regulation of these registered companies, most of the times, even these companies, we do not see them facing consequences. What is, the Kenyan law structured in that regard, regulating of these legally registered companies?
So the BRS, because that is the overall authority with respect to companies, really has no mandate with respect to whether a company. The only thing that has that mandate is the shareholders. If one shareholder believes that this company is not moving in the right direction, it can that shareholder can institute a suit. Sometimes because of the public outcry, sometimes the Attorney General or can file something. The prosecution can also, if it's criminal in nature, the prosecution can intervene. But really, it is the shareholders who have all the strength. Yes. Also, if your company is, for instance, a professional institution or say a hospital, also the bodies can also institute because they are stakeholders to that, to your company. But really, it's only the people who are affected by those, in law we call them ultra vires acts of the company can be able to do something about it. Because like I said, it's private. It's your business to do what it is that you're doing. If it's a public company, it's registered, for instance, in the NSE can do something about it, or the Capital Markets Authority can do something about it. Yes. And
in a situation where the members of, say for example, a particular limited circle limited, where people have invested maybe heavily, and then they feel that they have not, the company has not served to its purpose in what it was initially registered to, and then the outcry is not even heard, and say there's an history of that as well. Now, can the government step in and be able to take over in regards to investigation of this particular company and trying to to bring this company into book?
So, of course, the government has investigative arms, but there is no investigative arm of the private limited company. The only thing that can be done is one of the shareholders can go to the police station and make a report. Of course, that report has to be of a criminal nature, under the criminal law purview, for the government to get involved. When there is a public outcry, maybe maybe the government listens and feels that it's a huge public issue, then it can intervene. For instance, if say one of the bigger companies in Kenya, decide to do something that we feel is not, that the shareholders feel is not in operations, the government can step in. But really, the government's hand is really tied with respect to this thing. Actually, that is a good thing because it encourages investor confidence in a country. Because it means that the government will not really step into your affairs. It leaves for you to run your affairs. Just run your affairs. But if as a shareholder you feel that your company is not acting in the right manner, you can always file a claim or a suit. And as long as you provide evidence, then the court can be able to hear you and give you a decision. Yes.
Right. Talking about that, let's talk about we've been talking about the local companies and registration of the local companies, there's also, the registration of maybe a foreign company into maybe the motherland here. Let's talk about that particular process. Is the same, is the registration or rather incorporation of foreign company same as incorporation of local company? And
so I think it's very important that we are very clear in what you're asking. So, for instance, are you a Kenyan living in the diaspora willing to incorporate a company in Kenya, for instance? Or when you say a foreign company, is this a company that is domiciled in a different state that wants to open up, is it maybe a branch or a subsidiary? You understand? Another way you can look is, are you a foreigner wanting to incorporate a company in Kenya? You see, there are very many. That question is a bit.
Yeah, I think we can break the three of them, because I think that is our last bit of discussion. Maybe you are a Kenyan and you want to incorporate a foreign company in the country. Maybe we can interrogate that as well. So a foreign company that is foreign domicile and wants to maybe open or incorporate another company in Kenya. The different scenarios, we can just break them down.
Yes. So of course, if you're a Kenyan living in the diaspora and want to open a company in Kenya, you'll incorporate it just like any other Kenyan would. Because you have the national identity card or your passport together with your KRA pin. Strictly, a foreign company is a company that is domiciled in Kenya. That is the strict definition of what a foreign company is. So, for instance, if a foreign company wants to open a company in Kenya, it can only open it in two ways. It can either open it, one, as a subsidiary of that company, okay, or as a branch. All right. So a branch of a company, of a foreign company, can come and open a company in Kenya. Of course, subject to the regulations of where that company is based. But ideally, what you want is you need to get a sort of confirmation that it was agreed by the shareholders of the foreign company to open a branch in Kenya. This branch will have to be fully owned. If it's a branch, it will have to be fully owned by the foreign company. If you want to open a subsidiary company in Kenya and you're a foreign company, a subsidiary company, that company ought to the foreign company own 50 plus 1 shares of that company in Kenya. That's the requirement. So you have to own 50 plus 1%. Okay? Some say 51%, 50 plus 1, same threshold. And then you can also decide to own it 100%. There's no problem with that. But for you to open that subsidiary, you will need to have local directors who are Kenyan. Okay? You will need at least one. You have to have at least one local Kenyan who is the director of that company. Same applies to a foreigner wanting to open a company in Kenya. He can wholly own that company, but he will need to have at least a director who is a Kenyan of Kenyan nationality. Yes.
And I think that is much clear in regards to the foreign companies and all that. There is also the biggest process now, which require maybe in a case where a certain company feels that it has met its objective and now it feels like it's time that we close down our doors. What is the process like? We talked about the registration process being, going step by step. What is the process like, when the company feels that we are done with our objective and we need to close down our doors? Let's begin maybe with the private and then we go to the public, because maybe the process is quite different.
Yes, like I said at the beginning of this discussion, a company is a democracy. So again, the way a democracy works is you vote. So the shareholders decide, we have finished the objectives that we came to do in this country. Let us wind up. So the shareholders can decide to wind up the company. So they will again go to the e-Citizen portal and get the requisite forms that you need, fill them up. Once you fill them up, you also file together with the resolutions and the minutes of the company that we want to wind up the company. And then you can be able to wind up your company. I believe your question then would be, are there any other ways of winding up a company? Of course, you can use the insolvency way. The insolvency way is where the company is not able to meet its obligations. So where the company is not able to meet its obligations, like which one, for instance, like Saiton. I think that's the best examples right now. So the people that are owed can decide to file liquidation proceedings against that company. Yes. You can also file bankruptcy proceedings also in a similar manner. But depending on the type of company, the AG can appoint also somebody called a receiver manager. That receiver manager will then be appointed so that he can be able to dispose of the assets of the company if the company has any, and then pay up whatever creditors that are there, of course, depending on the hierarchy. Yes.
And then even as we come to the conclusion of this particular discussion, maybe we've talked about the entire process, and let's discuss about, or rather from your point of view, there's some of the misconception that you feel people, omit, especially when it comes to registration and running and management of companies. What do you think that is a common misconception that people have, especially from your experience?
I feel the most common misconception people have is that you must incorporate a company for you to run a business in Kenya. It is advisable, which is the advisable thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. But as a hustler, I think the best thing, and if you want to really incorporate, it would be better to use a business name. It's cheaper, you have a little bit more control. Of course, there are other added risks to it. Another thing is that people think that it's very easy to buy and sell companies. It's not a very easy process. It's a process that you need advice from somebody who's a professional. People think that it's very easy to remove a director of a company. It is very complicated. It's not very complicated. There's a lot of checkpoints that have been put by the BRS. Credit to them because they have noticed that there's a problem in the market where people just come and throw you out of a company. So when incorporating your company, make sure that the details that you give are very personal, very private to you. Sometimes you're told to put your email. Kindly, if you have an email, just put that email, but withhold the password to that email. When they are trying to remove you from to remove you from the company, for instance, as a director, that email, the BRS will send your personal email to you to confirm that you want to, to be removed from that company. So it's important that you keep those. Pin yako, siri yako. Same thing applies. Just make sure that your password is siri yako. Also, just keep your documents safe. Yes.
And also, as we conclude now, what would be your, last and maybe an advice now that your last parting shot as we conclude to the people perhaps who are watching us live on TV?
Always seek professional help where you can. Get professional help, but that is the caveat that I'm going to give. But the government has made a lot of headway in trying to make it easy for people to incorporate companies. In fact, we are at a point where you don't even need a lawyer. For instance, you can go to a cyber today and do the incorporation. Maybe you need a lawyer to maybe stamp one of those documents, but that's just about it. So I think you take advantage of that. Another thing is that you need to know is that you are required to file returns for a company. And if you don't file these returns, there's a penalty that you'll be paying. So it is important that you put that in mind when you're incorporating this company, and also have structures in place where you can file these returns with the BRS. If you don't do that, then you're going to incur penalties that you're not expecting. If you've incorporated a company and you don't know and you've not been filing these returns, maybe it's important to check with the BRS whether you have outstanding returns. They are usually done yearly, and then when you do it, you do another return at the time when you're filing, because it has to reflect the changes that you're trying to make. What would be the other thing that I would say? The KRA also. You also need to file returns for your company because it's considered as a person. Kindly comply with the KRA compliance requirements.
All right.
Yes.
I think that is a good point to end this particular discussion. You know, we've been talking matters to do with the commercial laws on registration of companies, hoping that we've been able to learn 1 or 2, 3 things for you to be able to understand what laws govern that particular process. Thank you so much for making time this evening, you know, to come and share some understanding of the registration of companies. Oyunge Bosire is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and also the managing partner of Oyunge and Associate Advocates. I think I got that one correct. Thank you so much for making time this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
And hoping to see you in our subsequent episodes as well, you know, talking about different topics, but all the same is the laws that govern this country.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And that is where we wind up this particular discussion. For all of you that have been watching, I appreciate your time for you to be able to catch the next episode next week on Thursday. This has been Know Your Laws. My name is Chris Sambo. We've been talking matters to do with the company registration. Next week, we touch on yet another different topic, but still under the commercial laws. But for now, I say goodbye. See you next week on Know Your Laws. But tomorrow in the morning, I'll be back with Kaki in the morning. So stay tuned wherever you are watching us from. But for now, goodbye and good night.